Let me ask you a question. Do you read Sutter Kane? That's right. Today we're going to be talking about the 1994 John Carpenter directed horror movie In the Mouth of Madness, and this new Arrow Video limited 4K UHD release. Now, this is considered the third in John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. The other two films, of course, are The Prince of Darkness and The Thing. But today we're going to be talking about this one, and I do have the previous Scream Factory, which is pretty good in itself, Blu-ray release of In the Mouth of Madness. So I was able to compare the quality between these two releases. And in this video, we're going to talk about the transfer. We're going to eventually unpackage this package, and we're going to talk about the movie. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films, and as you can see, I'm an avid physical media movie collector. I've been doing reviews on this channel for over a year now, and you can check out all my previous reviews and other content on the channel. In the Mouth of Madness, to me, is John Carpenter's best last film. Now, at least his best of his later films. And this is, I do feel like right after this film, his whatever he was doing after this kind of a lot of times felt like he was a hired gun. Now, not to say that I really do enjoy the movies that he made after this, and I have done reviews of the physical releases of three of them, including Village of the Damned, Ghost of Mars, and Vampires, which I do enjoy his later film work as well. But this kind of felt like the end of an era for John Carpenter, and I really think that this wouldn't kind of when he went out with a bang with In the Mouth of Madness. Now, the first time I remember hearing about In the Mouth of Madness was I was reading like Fangoria magazine. I used to have a subscription to it, and it had pictures of some of the monsters and some of the prosthetics from the film. Now, these things were played low key in the film, but they did have pictures of them in Fangoria. The movie itself stars Sam Neill. John Carpenter had previously worked with Sam Neill on Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase. Now, I do like this film. This is another one where he felt like he definitely was a hired gun for this one. And from what I've read about it or heard in interviews, he had a really miserable experience making this film. But he even mentions this in the director's commentary on In the Mouth of Madness. But he really clicked with Sam Neill, who played the villain in this movie. But it's been a while since I've seen this one, but I do like it. I like Chevy Chase, but apparently he's very hard to work with. And Sam Neill is very good in Memoirs of the Invisible Man. He's even better in The Mouth of Madness. He plays an insurance investigator who is really good at his job. Now, if you're trying to commit insurance fraud, and this character, he plays John Trent, if he shows up, you know you're in trouble. You're not going to be getting away with that insurance fraud. But he is almost the best of the best, and he kind of serves the purpose of a hard-boiled detective in the film In the Mouth of Madness. He is hired by a book publishing company run by Charlton Heston's character, and he's hired to investigate the disappearance of the author Sutter Kane. Now, Sutter Kane, of course, is very similar. The way that this 1994, where everyone was reading books, very similar to someone like Stephen King. I remember back in the day, that was like a big deal to be reading Stephen King. I was even when I was in school, I was part of the Book It program. Now, the Book It program, if you're not familiar with it, if you read like a ridiculous amount of books, you got a free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. And something about that free personal pan pizza, it was just like the best personal pan pizza you ever had if you read that many books, and you earned it. But back then, reading books was a lot bigger deal than it is now, and here Stephen King was selling so many books, and there's some dialogue in here where he eventually does find Sutter Kane, and Sutter Kane does mention that his books are being read more than even the Bible itself, and so now books aren't as big of a deal now, but I think maybe they will be again, but right now if this was done, it would almost have to be like a social media influencer, maybe someone like Mr. Beast trying to bring on this apocalypse. This is like I said, this is the third in the Apocalypse trilogy, and what happens in all three of these movies are events. They're not connected; they're just connected by themes, but they are events that could bring forth the apocalypse. Now, like I said before, the idea of the author in this book and kind of how his fame comes from something like a Stephen King type of writer. But the stories within the books themselves are more of an H.P. Lovecraft flavor. So this is technically an H.P. Lovecraft film. As we see these monsters within the story, as they start to come to life later in the film, this is inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and a pretty damn one of the better of the H.P. Lovecraft films that I've seen. Jurgen Prochnow plays the character Sutter Kane, and I recognized him when I saw this. I'd already seen Das Boot, and also The Keep. He plays a major character in the film The Keep. Now, this is a Vinegar Syndrome release of The Keep, really good release. There's also an upcoming imprint release that's going to be even thicker than this, and Vinegar Syndrome themselves are re-releasing this with a new slipcover. But I do like The Keep, but today we're talking about In the Mouth of Madness, which I like even better than The Keep. So back to the story. So Trent is hired. He's hired to go find this author, and he can't find him. Well, I'm sorry. He starts to read the books, and as he reads the books, he becomes engrossed with the books, and he even starts to have bad dreams that are brought on by the stories. And he eventually, it's kind of an odd thing. He gets a bunch of the book covers and cuts them up, and it creates like a map, and he's able to follow this map to go to a town called Hobbs Inn. Hobbs Inn is a story from one of the books, and he brings with him the publisher's assistant, played by Julie Carmen, and she goes with him, and they go to search for this mysterious fictional town called Hobbs Inn. And they eventually, through some kind of supernatural power, they do go into kind of what seems to be like a parallel universe vortex, which brings them into Hobbs Inn. This is a story that is perhaps an unreliable narrator story. The beginning of the film starts out with Sam Neill's character in an insane asylum in a padded cell. He is visited by a doctor played by David Warner. Now, John Glover plays the head of this institution. He's having a lot of fun in his brief role, but him and David Warner comes in, and he starts talking to Sam Neill's character, who's completely flipped his lid, and he's drawn like crosses all over this room and all over himself. He said he only has one black crayon he asked for, and somehow he's made that black crayon go pretty far. But we're going to let that go from suspension of disbelief, and it's a cool scene, it's a cool set. But I say unreliable narrator because often within, or is it, or is what we're seeing like what really happened? Because there are scenes that we see that don't involve Sam Neill's character. It involves Julie Carmen's character. Like they're driving, and he falls asleep, and she's the one that actually sees the transition from our world into Sutter Kane's or the Hobbs Inn. It's not really Sutter Kane. Sutter Kane is being manipulated by another force of the old ones. These old ones, these monsters, want him to write these stories, and he is just the messenger who is writing these stories, which eventually the idea is to bring these things to life and unleash them upon the world. But as I was saying, the narrator, it kind of switches points of view. For now, John Trent, Sam Neill's character, is a skeptic, and he smells a con, and he's looking for a con. And Julie Carmen's character, on the other hand, has been kind of manipulating a con that she admits to later, but she's like, now it's actually turned into something else. And she starts to see things in this town that he's not seeing. He doesn't see them until he's ready to see them. But we see her seeing those. So him being able to tell the story about her seeing that and what she sees, is that unreliable narration, or is it just, or are we actually seeing what really happened between the beginning and the end bookends? I don't know. You tell me what you think on that. So let's take a closer look at this release. Whoosh, In the Mouth of Madness. Now, Arrow Videos, they started doing this thing where they put a slip cover, which looks quite vibrant, over when I take the slip cover off. You're going to see kind of a muted colored, rigid box inside of this. Now, they did that with this and several of their other new ones. Now, they used to, and this is a newer release, but this is a duplicate of an older release. See how vibrant this is. Not a slip cover. This is actually the rigid slip box, and it looks much more colorful. Because let me show you what's going to happen when I remove this slip cover. Well, if I can get it off, and there it goes. All right, you see what I'm talking about? It's just the colors aren't quite there. Not that I kind of prefer this. I feel like this this slip cover does protect the release a little bit. So this is what it looks like when you take it off. Black on the back. And we have, I believe, 3 items inside of here. We have a poster, which we'll look at in just a moment. We have a booklet, and we have this release, or we have the regular release, which this does have a reversible cover. By the way, we have a card here for Excalibur. That is probably going to be a new release coming from Arrow Video fairly soon. I don't think that's, as far as I know, I don't think it's been announced yet. And here's what the disc looks like, a 4K only disc. There's no Blu-ray in this release. There is a reversible insert with the original theatrical cover art, which I dig that. I do like this new artwork as well. They're both quite nice. And this is a artist rendition of Sam Neill's character inside of the insane asylum once he's drawn all over himself with a black crayon. And in the front of it, this is one of the old ones, one of the monsters that comes through the tunnel after his character near the end of the film. Let's take a look on the inside. We have the contents. There's several essays throughout here. There's also some pictures mixed in. This is I really dig these books the Arrow does with their releases. But let's see. There's a monster there. There's a lot of cool practical special effects in this film that are used sparingly but effectively as the film goes on. There's John Carpenter and the producer Sandy King. Sandy King is also his wife now. There's Sam Neill in the loony bin, pre-crayon drawing. Yeah. And so there's a lot of information here in this book. There's Jurgen Prochnov as Sutter Kane. So let's go ahead and read a little bit about the transfer. Got my glasses here. We'll see what this says. This is about the presentation. In the Mouth of Madness has been restored by Arrow Films and is presented in its original aspect ratio of 2:39:1 with 5.1 and stereo audio. Now, real quick about the audio. I don't usually delve too far into talking about the audio because I don't have a bad sound system. Now, I always watch them on mono and with the subtitles on. Now, there was an issue slightly with this one, and it may have been on me. But like when there's something crazy happens, some action happens, or some monster shit happens, it gets really loud. But before that, when they're having their dialogue, and they're like, hey, I'm Sam Neill, and she's like, hey, I'm Julie Carmen, or whatever. Sometimes it's really hard to hear what they're saying. And so, like, I have to bump up the audio when that's happening. So when the monsters come up going, rah, 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 all of a sudden I have to bump it back down. I have to ride the audio, because if I don't, I hear like screaming from my wife in the other room who's trying to sleep, telling me to turn down the TV. So I'm like having to ride up and down the audio. It'd be cool if they came up with some kind of, like, I hate to say it, but AI technology that you put on, and it's like, hey, when it gets loud, like, bring the audio down. And it'd be cool if they came up with some kind of technology that helped that nature, even though I don't necessarily like the idea of AI. I like the AI for that purpose, because it is just the TV. It's the setting you put on the TV, like, hey, ride that audio. So now back to this. The film is presented in 4K resolution in HDR10 and Dolby Vision. Now, that is unique to this release as the Scream Factory release, which, by the way, I do like the Scream Factory artwork. This is quite nice. But this is Blu-ray only. It does not have an HDR grading. And that was one of the biggest differences I saw between this release and this. Now, this Scream Factory release here, it says a new 4K scan of the original film elements. But it's a different restoration. This one was specifically done by Arrow. Now, this it is a different transfer, but the color grading looks a little different in the Arrow one. And it actually looks, the HDR, a lot of times it will bring it does look more lifelike, but in general, like, it brought down, not the contrast. The contrast is actually up, but the vividness, like, it does, the skin tones look maybe less vivid or more desaturated in the Arrow release than they do in the Scream release. But it is a 4K uptick, and you do see an uptick in quality because there is more information there. But it doesn't. But the Blu-ray on most TVs is going to look very similar to the quality as the 4K does. So it says the original 35mm negative was scanned in 4K/16-bit resolution at Warner Brothers Motion Picture Imaging. The film was restored in 4K resolution and graded by Duplatech, and that's unique to this release, to the Scream one. All materials for this new master were made available by Warner Brothers. And then it tells you more credits of the people who worked on, which they deserved credit, but I'm not necessarily going to read it out because it will probably bore you at this point and you won't even remember their names. But let's go ahead and take a look at the poster, and we're going to talk more about the transfer after that. Now, this is a double-sided poster. This is the new artwork that's on the cover of the Ridges slip box, and on the back we have something very unique. This is the cover to one of the novels, Sutter Kane, In the Mouth of Madness. That's what the last story that Sutter Kane is writing that causes the apocalypse is called In the Mouth of Madness, just like the movie is called In the Mouth of Madness. And the movie deals with a man going from being sane at the beginning, or really after the top book end, to gradually becoming unhinged and insane by the end of the film. And it's a really great performance by Sam Neill. Now, let's talk about the other areas of the transfer. There are a lot of dark areas in this film. Those dark areas do look nice. You do see the film grain. This was shot on 35mm film. You see some film grain. This hasn't been, as far as I can tell, I don't see a digital enhancement that scrubbed that film grain out. It's all present and there, but not overbearing. It's very nicely resolved. It's not distracting. You see some pretty good detail in those darker areas, even though you do see more grain in those areas, but you're not going to notice it unless you're like me and you're looking to see what the dark areas look like, because usually you're just watching what's going on in the film. In general, the film looks very nice. The colors are all the colors are, like I said before, they're maybe a little duller in this 4K release, but it's actually on purpose, I guess, to bring out an aesthetic to the film. There are some fall colors earlier on. There's some leaves, but it doesn't really hold up too much as being fall. You don't see a lot. You have a little bit of feel for it earlier, but it kind of loses it as it gets into the film and it becomes darker in the movie. These practical special effects, these H.P. Lovecraft monsters, they're hidden a lot of times by dark lighting very effectively. All of it looks friggin' fantastic in both of these transfers. The 4K transfer does bring about a little bit more sharpness to the closer shots, and the fine detail does hold up quite nice. Now, I'm going to read to you a little bit about, I'm going to talk about them too, the special features. Now, the special features from the Shout release are imported over to this New Era release. By the way, I flipped this insert, so now we're going to have like the original cover art on the inside, and the outside will be the new art. But it does import the special features from the Scream Factory disc, which included, for the Scream Factory, was a brand new interview from Julie Harmon. And so that's still on here. And all the extras, there's a lot of archive extras on here that were on the Scream Factory disc. This one does also include some brand new special features, including an interview with Jurgen Prochnov, which is quite nice. It's a 2025 interview where he talks about his experience on the film, and it's a pretty good interview. And there's also an interview, a brand spanking new interview with Sandy King, the producer, and as I said before, John Carpenter's wife, and she has a lot of information about the film and the process of making it. Now, if you listen to, there's two directors' commentaries. There's one, I think, with John Carpenter and her, and there's another one with John Carpenter and the director of photography. Now, back about a year ago, I listened to both of those, and I was working on a Conversations in Horror podcast. It's Kevin Powers' podcast, and I was a guest host on that one, along with Nate Hill, and we talked about this film for probably about an hour or so, and you can check out that. It's an audio podcast. You can check out that audio podcast at Conversations in Horror. It is on YouTube, and you can just look that up, Conversations in Horror. You know what? I'm going to put a link in the description below. Now, this film does have a bit of a religious context in it, or some religious overtones, where it talks about people who follow the words of this book blindly, and they become kind of engrossed like a cult into what the book says, which it ultimately has them killing people with axes and other things. But it brings about an evil, a meanness out of people, a desire to go and destroy the world. But I think this speaks strongly in favor of religion. Maybe not. It speaks against the wrong religion, and you have to pick the right religion. You have to pick the religion that has the right lessons in it, because if you pick the wrong one, you're going to be doing these terrible things. And that's the thing about religion. I think if you don't have it, you're gonna have to fill that void with something else. And if you pick the wrong thing to fill that void with, it's gonna grow, and it's going to maybe bring forth the apocalypse. So let's go ahead and rate this. I'm gonna rate the release, and I'm also gonna rate the movie. I'm gonna rate it on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm going to give the film In the Mouth of Madness, I'm going to give it a 4-star. No, I'm going to give it a 4.5-star rating. I really like this film. As far as this Arrow 4K UHD release, I'm going to also give it a 4.5-star rating. I think they really did a great job of this very thick box, slip box, a rigid box of In the Mouth of Madness. Well, let me know what you think about this film, In the Mouth of Madness, if you've seen it before. And I want you to click on this box here, and that's going to bring you to that time that I reviewed Ghost of Mars. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.